And so, muchachos, aquí tenemos unos ejemplos. We're going to show some examples of where we'd use these object pronouns and what their translations might be if we're using those in a sentence. Now, we are going to see, if you look at the slides, you're going to see some verbs that we haven't looked at yet. We'll look at those as we get officially into chapter 6, which will be about feelings and personality and health, which is definitely a topic that is a good one, right? Health right now. It's on everyone's mind. So I'll show you some examples and then you'll see some of the verbs that we'll use going into chapter 6. For now, we're going to focus on those that we looked at last week. So we saw this example, right? We have let's say me aburre, right? And so when we say me, we know that it's boring to who? It's boring to me. Okay, so that's where we see me aburre. Now, I'm going to show you the same example several times so we can see how that changes as we change our pronoun. So let's say we're going to use this example. Me aburre la clase de inglés. We're going to make sure it fits here on that page. So me aburre, we know we're talking about to me. Now, what if I change this? If I change this to te aburre, what are we now talking about? Are we talking about it being boring to me? No, we're talking about it being boring to you. Okay. Now, we're going to see some new examples. We saw those last week. Let's see the new ones. So if I say something like this, we're in a group and I say, nos aburre la clase de inglés. Now, who are we talking about? Am I just talking about myself? No, I've added at least one other person. And so what we're saying here is a nosotros, to us, that class is boring. We flip that in English, right? We'd say English class is boring to us, right? Nos aburre la clase de inglés. Okay, here's where it gets a little tricky and where we need to start identifying who is the exact person we're going to use. When we use le, or les, we are probably always going to need, unless we already know who we're talking about, we're always going to need to identify exactly who's being talked about before we use that pronoun. I'll give you an example of how we might do that. If I just say, le aburre la clase de inglés, I could be talking about several different types of people. I could be talking about him, that class is boring to him. It could be ella. It could be usted, right? And so it's important that we identify who is the person that class is boring to. And so I'll give you an example here. If I say, a Gary le aburre la clase de inglés, who is it boring to? Gary, right? And if I change that, right? If I change that to a ella, or a name, if I were to say Maria, right? That's a girl name. A ella le aburre la clase de inglés. Who is the class boring to? Ella, or Maria. Now, we could also use that, right, with usted. If we're talking to someone in a formal way, we might say, a usted le aburre la clase de inglés. Okay? If we just have le, it could be ambiguous or it could be unclear exactly who we're talking about. The same goes when we start talking about the plural form, which is les, right? If I just say les aburre la clase de inglés, it could be ellos, a group of either all boys or a boys and girl mix. Could be ellas, right? A group of only girls. It could be ustedes. ¿Qué significa ustedes? You all, right? So if I'm addressing a group of people, if I'm saying you, that's plural, multiple people. Now, again, we need to follow that pattern. If I say, for example, a ellos les aburre la clase de inglés. Who's the class boring to? Them. If I change that to ellas, a ellas les aburre la clase de inglés. Same thing, right? To them. And the same would go if I say ustedes. A ustedes les aburre. Notice in all of these examples, this verb did not change because the only thing we're changing is who is the person, the one that's receiving the action. Who is it boring?